I only recently played Marvel's Spider-Man for the first time, like many others, with the game's release on PC, and I absolutely adored it. As someone who has grown up with various Spider-Man media and art forms a part of my life, it felt like Insomniac created a love letter to that character and his world, and it honestly blew me away. It's been a long time since a game, especially in the open world genre, has captivated me quite as much as Spider-Man did, and so after my journey with that game had come to a close, I wasn't quite ready to hang up the web slingers. I was really excited to finally play Miles Morales because I'd heard if you enjoyed Marvel's Spider-Man, you should enjoy Miles Morales, and I have to say, I definitely agree with that opinion. Miles Morales is more of the same for better and for worse. This is very much a game where the approach seemed to be if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and for the most part, I was okay with that because again, I loved how the first game felt. With that being said, I do understand why people have an issue with this title now that I've completed it because it feels like the same issues people had going from Arkham City to Origins or going from Assassin's Creed 2 to Brotherhood. Same locales, same sort of gameplay loop, another $70 to $80. Australian dollars, alright, calm down. It's always a tricky topic when dealing with worth. I'm sure there are people out there who would pay more for this experience because the game is worth it to them, but for me personally, when you boil down Miles Morales, it feels like an expansion to the original game. Whether that feeling is furthered by the game's runtime or the fact I only just finished up with the first game, I'm not too sure, but it just didn't quite feel like a spin-off and it definitely doesn't feel like a sequel. To me, it feels like an incredible expansion on the first game, and I think if that's what it was, the game's reused assets and features would be easier to swallow. As I said though, I did enjoy my time with Miles Morales, and whilst a price point is where your opinion may vary, this is more Spider-Man, and I'm very okay with that. Before I start diving into my thoughts on the game itself, I do want to touch on the difference in bias for me between Marvel's Spider-Man and Miles Morales, namely being I grew up with Peter Parker's Spider-Man. That's my bread and butter. That's not to say I don't enjoy Miles Morales as Spider-Man. Again, Into the Spider-Verse is one of my favorite Spider-Man movies to date, but I just don't have any nostalgia associated with the character or his villains. He's a character I love learning more about as I've gotten older, and I now know the basics to his backstory, character, and a couple of his villains, but it's nowhere near the connection I have to Peter. I bring this up because in the first game I got such a big kick out of the villain reveals, the iconic locales, the characters, storylines, and so many nods to that nostalgia I spoke of, and here in Miles Morales I still had those moments, they were just a lot less frequent for me. That's not a make or break detail, it just is the difference in my knowledge of the character and subsequently the difference in my experience in each game, that's all. With all that being said though, I am going to be dropping that spoiler warning now, so if you haven't played Miles Morales for yourself and want to go into that first playthrough blind, here is your cue to leave. Do feel free to leave the video a like though, and comment below to let me know if there are some more Spider-Man games you want to see covered in the future. For everyone else, let's dive into Spider-Man Miles Morales. First and foremost, let's talk story, because it is the biggest difference here in Miles Morales. The story here in Miles Morales is predictable. Miles is still learning how to be Spider-Man, he gets left alone far too early, and over the course of the game learns what it takes to protect his city solo through the trials of some villains. That's the core of the story, and it sort of is what it is, which was much the same in Spider-Man, though that had better build up and payoffs, which I'll touch on in a minute. Where Spider-Man really captivated me was with those characters, and again, most of the characters here in Miles Morales are the compelling factor for the story. Let's start with Miles because, well, he's the centerpiece. As I said, Miles is still very much figuring things out as Spider-Man. He's looking to Peter as the idol and example, and no one really takes him seriously to begin with because he is that shadow to Spider-Man as opposed to being Spider-Man. It's only through being thrown into the mantle due to Peter's absence that he begins to find that confidence in his own abilities as Spider-Man, being able to fill that mantle only to learn he just needs to be himself, his own version of Spider-Man Spider-Man visualized in the progression of his suits. Starting off as a Spider-Man wannabe almost, and then developing his own style, which sidebar is an awesome design. The red on black is slick. It's through Miles' talk with his best friend Genki though that really helps him understand that Spider-Man is a suit. The person underneath defines what it means, which is really a great moment. Genki and Miles' relationship is a true highlight of the story, and you get a strong sense of true friendship there, with the banter paired with a real feeling that they do anything for one another. A big element in Miles' Spider-Man, and what I really loved about his character, is he makes for the perfect friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. That was something I neglected to mention in the first video because I didn't really think about it until it was done so well here. Peter never really felt like he was a part of his community. Yes, he helped people in need, but here Miles feels like he connects with his neighborhood. He knows his local bodega owner, talks in sign to the deaf artist on his block, interacts with people in the street, and through the app you get to know more and more of these people, which was awesome to see. Miles is just a really compelling protagonist, and his story and growth in this game carries the story. Unfortunately, where the story fumbles for me is tied to a few issues, but namely that there just isn't enough time for some of these characters to develop. To a lesser extent, I would have liked to have seen more of Rio Morales and her crack at politics. I'm sure there's some scumbaggery that could have come from that, bringing in some more villains. Krieger sort of feels a bit shoehorned in at times. I wish we got more with the Prowler and Miles, as I love their moments together, but for me the biggest point where the story falls flat is with Finn Mason or the Tinkerer. First of all, the reveal is very meh. I'm not sure if that was supposed to be a twist, but if it was, again, predictable, and you don't really know who Finn is up to that point anyway. I understand I'm supposed to feel sympathetic to her character, I understand her motivations, and I understand at points she's blinded by vengeance and the person she's going after in Krieger is terrible. But her character borders on the unbelievable and ridiculous. I mean, she passed the point of redemption for me when, as your friend, she could have seriously hurt your mum in an ill-planned attack, and she never gets any backlash for that from Miles really. To me, she's a crap human being, which is all well and good for a villain. I mean, I have no sympathy for Rhino, but they try so hard to make her redeemable, and for me, it doesn't work. She's constantly beating the living daylights out of Miles even after she knows who Spider-Man is. She doesn't listen to any form of reason, even when it's blatantly obvious. She just isn't likable, which again is fine if they didn't try so hard to change my mind, and it meant when she sacrificed herself after causing this mess, even though Miles is upset, I was shrugging. I could see a world where if they built her character up a bit more like they did with Doc Ock, that I could hop on board the sympathy train, but in 5 hours it just isn't enough time to do so, and it really ended up leaving a sour taste in my mouth by the end. Thankfully, Miles at the end acknowledges that he's sad at Finn's passing and grateful for her sacrifice, saving him and Harlem, but she caused the mess to begin with, not ignoring her misdeeds, which after they ignored her actions on the bridge, I thought they were going to again here. The story here just doesn't feel like it has enough time to properly develop, which is a shame because I really enjoyed Miles and his cast of characters here and the journey of discovery and growth. The story beats are predictable though because there isn't enough time to make them anything except for what they are. I mean, Finn is shown once or twice before her reveal as the Tinkerer, so obvious one there, but Krieger taking Rhino for his own use instead of handing him to the police is another example of predictability. It's an enjoyable story, but it could have been great if they just had more time either in development or simply more game time. Now in terms of gameplay, a lot of what I enjoy about Miles Morales I've already spoken on in my Spider-Man video. The combat is still satisfying with a great flow to it, the stealth is still good fun, the web swinging is still amazing, and exploring New York is still worthwhile. On the surface, the differences seem inconsequential from Spider-Man to Miles Morales, but when you start digging a little deeper, the biggest difference is in the name. Peter Parker and Miles Morales are very different people, and that shows in all aspects of this game. For example, Miles is very new to being Spider-Man, and as such, he doesn't have the gadget arsenal of Peter, but instead he has those Venom combinations that pair with his personality so well. These attacks are flashy, they have style, and boy do they pack a punch. They're a quality new addition to the combat that remains outside of that largely similar. These combinations aren't overpowered, but you get access to them frequently due to the difference in the enemy encounters this time around. The combat is much more challenging here in Miles Morales, which again makes sense due to his inexperience, and those Venom combinations are the equalizer. The number of enemies in a given encounter, the speed of the enemy, the defense, it all makes you have to really consider your attacks, and when you have the chance to punch an enemy into dust or throw them into oblivion, it just feels so damn good. When you pair the new gadgets, Venom combinations with the quality of the existing combat and improved challenge of the enemies, it makes for a solid improvement that makes it like Peter taught Miles how to fight, and now he's adding his own flair, which is great. Stealth wise, the improvements are more subtle. I did really enjoy the extra emphasis on wall and ceiling takedowns that were sorely missed in the original. The extra challenge in the enemy encounters means stealth is much more important, especially in the bases or larger crimes. The removal of the Mary Jane moments was a good touch, and with the new addition of the chameleon ability, it means you can go in and out of stealth much easier. Same goes for the web swinging. It's not too different. The main difference is in the Venom boost and the general flair and almost clumsiness that Miles' animations carry. It's still great fun and incredibly satisfying, and I don't really know what else I would add to improve that system. In regards to the game's bosses, we don't get the quantity we saw in Spider-Man. It's a much more focused roster this time around, but for the most part, they're all quality encounters. I mean, the optional fight with Vulture is a bit whatever, been there, done that, which is sort of the point, but even Peter's narration saves that fight, making it enjoyable to hear his ramblings. Rhino's 2 battles got the improvement I was looking for, as the first game's fight was a little blasé, and here he does have a bit more of that Bane quality. The first fight sees Miles getting used to his Venom abilities and acts as a solid tutorial fight, but the second fight is a blast, as you need to find your openings, knock off his new armor, use the environment to stun him, and all whilst avoiding his attacks and the wealth of enemies by his side. The fight with the Prowler was so much fun, my favourite fight in the game actually, due to its simplicity and how he is sort of similar to the Taskmaster. A very counter-heavy encounter that is just satisfying to participate in. Not too challenging, but his invisibility and cloning means you need to keep your eyes peeled because he is a quick one. The Tinkerer battle, outside of the performance issues, I mean that frame rate does tank here. But that aside, visually, this was an incredible fight, and if you muck around, you'll get insta-killed, which makes her by far the biggest threat boss-wise out of both games. She's super quick, has a wealth of different attacks that you need to learn, and if you mistime your attacks, you'll be put in your place very quickly. Plus, visually, wow. Absolutely incredible. I do wish we got more boss battles, at least 1 or 2 more side bosses would have been cool, but these were some really great quality encounters, both visually and fun factor wise. I think the biggest issue in Miles Morales' gameplay is just how much of an asset flip New York feels here. I've seen these rooftops, these city streets and locales, and outside of the snow, it just feels like I'm doing it again. That was how I felt for a long time, just going through the motions in the world because the core gameplay and character of Miles was so great. But then something happened. I started to appreciate New York differently than how I did in Spider-Man. Yes, this is the same world we've seen, but after I completed a few side missions, grew to know some people in the communities, helped people find their lost cats, to helping a delivery driver make his deliveries after being snowed in. As I said in the story, Miles truly feels like your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and because of that and how the side content makes you experience this world, it made it feel different. It may not be visually all that different, but through helping people, finding sounds your uncle and dad were making into a track, going on a scavenger hunt your dad had planned for your 16th, and then pairing that with the missions themselves and how through the rallies or going and infiltrating the underground, you get a much more down-to-earth view on this world, which is why I went for 100% again. I haven't gotten the platinum yet because I have to beat New Game Plus, which I don't normally do, but this world is enticing even if at first it feels all too similar. Also, before I move on from the open world, the suits once again were a big driving factor in me wanting to go out and explore this world. They're just incredible, with the Bodega suit easily being number one. I mean, how can you not rate this suit? You get Spider-Man the cat on your back to help you fight crime. It's amazing. If I was to criticize Miles Morales, I would say the crimes once again feel a bit been there, done that. Same goes for some of the base designs. Again, I know these rooftops, and whilst they may have been tweaked, it doesn't feel like a huge difference. I'm also not a huge fan of forcing New Game Plus to unlock final upgrades. I know the game's only 5 or so hours, but still, I'd like to have the opportunity to get everything in one playthrough. Outside of those criticisms, the only other issue I can think of is going to vary wildly from person to person, and that's this game's price point. What the game is going to be worth to you, I cannot say. I will say I got the game on sale for roughly about half price, and that felt about right to me. In fact, it felt like a bit of a steal. Either way, I think if you're a fan of Spider-Man, you should enjoy Miles Morales, and I hope it makes its way to PC soon as well, because an IP like Spider-Man should be on more than just one platform. Overall though, I had a lot of fun with Spider-Man Miles Morales, and now I'm just foaming at the mouth to get my hands on Spider-Man 2. Thank you all so much for watching my video on Spider-Man Miles Morales. I had a good time playing this game, and I hope you enjoyed visiting the game with me. If you did, make sure to leave the video a like because it helps let me know that you enjoyed yourself. Comment below your thoughts on Miles Morales or just Spider-Man in general, as well as any suggestions for games you want to see covered in the future. Shout out to the channel members Infamous Sir Hellfire, featuring Gagiano, Christian Volgag, and Cloud Connection for that extra level of support. I truly do appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Go give my socials a follow if you fancy, at MayorHairBear, and I'll catch you all in the next video.